welcome back to our third and final virtual adventure with USD 259 today. We're so excited to be here with Joe. What we're talking about today is Guardians of the Prairie, protecting Kansas wildlife. Joe, we're so excited to learn from you.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me and do this virtual day for 259. We're here at Sedgwick County Zoo again, and we're going to talk about, like you said, Guardians of the Prairie, a variety of species here in Kansas, and how we can have our hand in helping. So yeah, so we're starting here in the North American River Otter exhibit, like I said, in the North America area at Sedgwick County Zoo. We'll talk about kind of organizations that protect species with U.S. Fish and Wildlife in the greater Kansas area in the state and the country, and then also if the zoo specifically. So we got a couple different ways. So we'll specifically talk about some species here in North America. We're starting with the North American River Otter. We'll see if we can get some good looks at them swimming around. So with U.S. Fish and Wildlife, there are game species and non-game species. So this is kind of an example of a species that would be a game species. And really what that means are they're going to be species that are protected by law. The numbers are kind of tracked, reported. You know when you can get a permit to hunt or trap species. A non-game species would be a species that you cannot do that with. So these are considered a game species. So they are a little more protected. The numbers are. So we have two North American river otters here at Sedgwick County Zoo. We have Jack and Barb. So I don't know what kind of good or what kind of look we'll get. They're usually really, really active. They're always a fan favorite here at Sedgwick County Zoo. So you can see them swimming in here. Barb is going to have a little bit of mark under her nose and a more of a flat tail at the end. Jack is going to have a little more pointed tail. They're here showing off. They know they're on camera. That's why people love the otters. They're always here to show off a little bit. So when it comes to game species and non-game species, doing your part as far as just being a good citizen of Kansas is going to give them a lot of support. Obviously, you're talking about them, sharing their information to people here in the state is going to be beneficial. And if there was any hunting or trapping going on, you make sure to have a permit. Make sure those that do those types of things are permitted to take care of them. Animals that aren't game species, an example of that would be like purple martin, which is a bird species. They are not protected the same way, and a lot of those species are endangered, so they're not tracked out in any way. You can actually give some tax refund to those types of species. You can set up birdhouse for those types of species. Different ways to protect those non-game species, and it's really important to kind of get those animals out there because they're not as regular. So they don't have to be endangered, but there's a variety of species that are endangered, not endangered for those non-game species. So I want to make sure I highlight some of those. So we're going to go on next to our North American Prairie building. That's where a lot of offices are, but we're not going to go back to the offices. That's too boring. We're going to stay in front of house. We'll show you some different snakes as well as the black-footed ferret. So if there's any more clips of the river otter before we head to the next spot, we can go ahead and do that. Throwing off the moves. See here. Looks like Jack. Looks like there's a nice pointed tail there. I'm not their caretaker. Oh yeah, you can definitely tell. Not their caretaker, but I definitely got a good glimpse of it there. So it helps that they're always really close up front. If they were hiding in the back, I would know heading for it. All right, let's move on over.
So what do those mainly eat?
So they eat a variety of different fish, any crustaceans that would be found in fresh water because they're river otters, not sea otters, where sea otters would be in salted ocean water, and river otters are going to be in your fresh water here in the landlocked spots. So they're one of the few animals that we do like live feedings for. So if you catch them at a live feeding time, they can swim and you can watch them catch them, and that's really, really exciting. So like I said, they're one of everyone's favorites because people love to see their animals kind of moving around and active, and they're going to give you really high odds to do something like that. So we're going to come on over, and I think we'll start with the snakes here. So when it comes to snakes, a lot of times they get a bad rap. I'm sure if I was asking a poll out there, who's afraid of snakes, we get a nice, good collection of people raising their hand. In reality, it's not really an animal you need to be really fearful of, but I understand why, because they can move really quickly. They don't have the limbs. They don't have you can't really get some of their nonverbal movements that you can from other animals. They just get that, and they have kind of this kind of historic view of like being sneaky, of being conniving, and and they move fast. So there's a lot of things that kind of throw you off about them. But there's a lot of reasons why we need to protect and care for snakes. Here in Kansas, I don't believe that any of them are a game species, but there's a lot of states where you can round them up and everything like that. But it depends on where you live within the country. And Kansas, we don't really have a ton of rattlesnakes, but there are when you get in the western part of the state, you get the prairie rattlesnakes. Down in the southern part of the state, there's a rattlesnake known the Massasauga that you can come across. So I don't know. It looks like you can see one right here. It looks like this one's the Arizona ridge-nosed rattlesnake. So that's not a Kansas species, but like I said, we do get rattlesnakes here in Kansas. So when you come across a rattlesnake, you really need to kind of to protect yourself because you can be dangerous. There's a reason why people again are fearful of them, and it's because a lot of them, especially rattlesnakes, have a venom. They're known as a pit viper, so they have the fangs that can inject venom. But they're going to warn you. That's one of the benefits of a rattlesnake. If you come across a rattlesnake, more often than not, it's going to be scared of you. And so you're going to hear that rattle, and it's going to be that warning for you to back off. They don't want to bite you. They want to save that venom because they have to work to kind of build that venom to kill their prey. That's one of their means to survive. They need that venom to kill their prey, to eat the rabbit or the mouse or whatever they're trying to kill, a small bird, and get that food that they need to sustain them. So they don't want to bite you. That's truly their warning, saying back off. We don't want to bite you. So odds are, unless you happen to just step right on it or in such a circumstance like that, it's got to be safe to come across a rattlesnake. You just got to keep your distance, your safety. So they have their benefit in the state of Kansas, here in Kansas Day, in any day, and you just make sure and respect their space and partake in it. So I don't know if there's any here.
Oh yeah.
Get a good view of one there.
Right.
Sometimes when the train passes over, I get
Right there. You can kind of see that one in the back. So are you telling me these snakes are not going to just start chasing me?
No, these snakes don't just chase you unless you're holding one of their favorite foods. They're pretty much, they like to stay low key. They'll hide under a rock, a crevice, in a ditch somewhere to kind of stay out of sight because they could potentially be prey for a larger animal as well. And they need to control their body temperature by means outside of their own body. They're what's called an ectotherm. So they're going to get all their energy from the sun or that warmth from the sun. But if it's too hot, they need to stay cool and they'll stay in a cool spot. So more often than not, they're laying low to keep that body temperature as controlled as possible because they can't regulate it on their own. So animals outside of a rattlesnake that would be an ectotherm would be fish, any insect, bug, amphibian like frogs and salamanders. Those are your ectotherms, where like birds and mammals are going to be endothermic. They can control their own, regulate their own body temperature. So any questions on them that we see in there in the chat?
Yeah. I mean, really, they're just curious how many, like, is that venom from a rattlesnake? Can it be fatal?
So that just depends on the size of what they're biting. Obviously, a smaller child, I mean, if you've got little ones or anything, I understand, have a little more fear of that. But more often than not, it's going to be just something you get treated right away. If you use an antivenom, cut off wherever that venom may go. To kind of help you there. But we keep antivenoms here at Sedgwick County Zoo for if there were an incident of this sort. But more often than not, it's going to be fatal. Not going to be fatal. But it just depends on how much that venom is in the system as well. So
we got a shout out from Riverside Elementary, and great question from Lorenzo. What do you do if they bite you?
I would just call, or I would get a hold of some authorities that could help with that, whether it's poison control. Here at the zoo, like I said, you'd contact any staff member you can get a hold of. 911 would be a very important call as well. They're going to have the support that you need. Get you to a hospital, get the right treatments at that point, because you want it treated as soon as possible. So if you don't have means or access to get to 911, contact someone that you, whoever's around you that can get a hold of them. That would be your first bet. So, but
typically, as long as you get treatment, it's
more often than not would be fatal. Like I said, it depends on how much the venom is injected into you, but you don't know that if you get a bite. You're not going to know right away, like, oh, this is going to harm me to an extent that could be fatal. So, like I said, it's okay to be cautious and to be aware, but you have to just know what they're capable of and just make sure you know their warning signs and keep that distance. But a lot of people think that if you see a snake, just take it out. You know what I mean? That's just not necessarily going to be beneficial long term for our ecosystem. So.
We got Phillipsburg, Kansas here with us today. They are wondering how long does it take for that venom to affect you?
I'm not exactly sure because it also depends on, like how much venom, all that type of thing. You're going to obviously see some sort of reaction where the bite is. You'll probably see the hole of where the bite was. You'll see change in color. You may see swelling. That's a very bad, that's a sign that you need to take action right away. And a lot of times something, not a snake, but like a spider or something, you may not know right away. It may just have a little irritation. And it's going to take longer for you to even notice. Where this is going to be a little more obvious, I think you'll know right away. No matter what, I would get a hold of, 911 and get help as fast as you can.
Is there any more rattlesnakes around the corner here?
Yep, timber rattlesnake and prairie rattlesnake. So these are animals unlike the ones that you'll be more likely to find here in Kansas. So prairie rattlesnakes are a little more common. Copperheads, kind of more southern, southeastern part of the state as you get southeast in the country.
Oh, here we go. It's up here if you can kind of see it in the corner, maybe.
Oh, here's the prairie is right up front here too. Right there on the top of that rock to the right.
Oh yeah, here we go.
You get the glare off of it.
There it is.
Yeah, sweet.
That is cool. So what kind of rattlesnake is this they're looking at?
That's the prairie rattlesnakes. That's going to be most common, probably, especially in your prairie, and that's exactly what we're talking about today. So,
Ooh.
So as we shift from game and non-game species here in Kansas, as far as protection here within zoos, the AZA institutions, Association of Zoos and Aquariums, we have species known as safe species. So that's kind of a zoo internally protected group of species. Where they're going to have a lot of relationships with conservation organizations and a lot of control in the breeding programs. So one of those species that's really important to Kansas and our prairies is the black-footed ferret. So come on over and I'll show you in a minute. So this is actually a fairly new exhibit here in Citrus County Zoo, about a year old. And so this is our black-footed ferret exhibit. We have two males. They're typically a solitary animal, so we keep them on exhibit one at a time. Hopefully you can get a look at them. They usually like to sleep in their little corner. So he's way down here at the bottom. You can almost guarantee that he's gonna be hiding down in there. We have two black-footed ferrets that I can already tell you right now. I'll tell you which one this is. We have Tannerite, or they call him Tanner, and Will Ferret. So if you're familiar with Will Ferrell, that is where he got his name, Will Ferret. So I don't know which one's on exhibit right now.
I'm trying to get him a good.
Yeah, that's tough to get. It's tough to get a good. Can you see? I can see him right there in the middle of that screen. Yeah, good shot. So the reason why this is such an important species to talk about here in Kansas is the black-footed ferret was once thought to be extinct. They didn't know that they had any more left in the country. They didn't know they had any more. And so there was a ranch up in Wyoming, and in the mid to late 1900s, it was like 1971, I believe, there was a ranch dog that actually killed one, took it to the ranch owner's door, and the rancher noticed it, didn't really recognize it at first, but then was like, oh, I think I know what this might be. Took it into proper authorities, and they did identify it as black-footed ferret. They found a whole colony of black-footed ferrets, and from that moment, they were able to reestablish that species and begin breeding programs to get them reestablished into the wild. And we actually have conservation and breeding programs to protect them. About 80 to 90% of their diet is prairie dogs, so they're super vital in keeping those numbers at bay naturally instead of having to do hunting for them. So that's really, really nice. And one of the benefits of having them, there are colonies out in the western part of the state that we help actually even with tracking them, releasing them back into the wild in those types of situations. So it's really cool that we can do that. Because they're so protected, there is really only one place that does true breeding with them in Colorado. And they're kind of got the main bulk of the population that they disperse to zoos and anywhere that would house them to show them and tell their story. So they're an amazing species to represent animals that are part of a breeding program and a conservation program known as SAFE, which is saving animals from extinction. So just hearing about that, talking about it with your friends and family, and just supporting your zoos, your conservation organizations is a great way to just continue to give them support and keep our our prairies and our ecosystem healthy. So, any
Awesome.
questions on that black-footed ferret?
So this isn't about the black-footed ferret, but we have some friends from Shawnee Mission, Kansas, and they're curious how often these snakes shed their skin.
Snakes. So it depends on the species. I would guess some of them monthly, some kind of every few months. Like I said, it depends on the species, and I'm not exactly sure which one to kind of pinpoint, or I don't necessarily know which ones it takes however long. But that is part of just making sure they have fresh new skin that's as healthy to, because that old skin just gets loose. And if you've ever seen a snake that has a shed that's about to come off, it's not really going to benefit it. It's kind of got that next skin to grow out. Where like we've got dead skin cells coming off all the time, you don't even really notice it. They don't have that. They have to kind of release it all at once, and it regrows from the bottom.
Gotcha. So another one here from Manhattan, Kansas. Welcome, Manhattan. What caused, or what are some causes of them becoming endangered?
Yeah. So the push of just people on land is one of the biggest things. Building agricultural lands took out a lot, and especially way back when stuff was really being established, anything that was in the way of land was a threat, basically. So that was a big thing, and anything that was going to take up space that has a hole that could potentially injure a cow or anything like that, or could bring coyotes onto their land or anything along those lines was a threat. So a lot of times it was hunting. A lot of times they're taking away space and taking away land, not even on purpose, but just because they need land to have their cattle or their sheep or whatever they've got out to feed. They need that space to provide food. And so to a certain extent, you need that. So it's a matter of finding that balance. We have a lot of established farmland. It's just a matter of knowing where you can relocate them or put them where it's not going to harm and cause any issues and conflict. And honestly, you want healthy prairies, healthy ecosystems that can coexist with farming. So it's just important to keep those as healthy as possible, as balanced as you can.
So we have Nevaeh from Manhattan. Hi, Nevaeh. She's wondering if ferrets bite.
So one of our things that we talk about a lot of times in summer school stuff, if it has a mouth, it bites. If it eats, it poops. If it lives, it dies. So anything with a mouth can bite. Certain animals are going to be more aggressive than others. Obviously, a lot of animals aren't going to be like being held or handled. And so that's going to be a way to bite you, to get you to drop them and to leave them alone. Obviously, if it's conditioned over time to trust, then maybe not in that scenario, it's going to be less likely to. But a lot of our animals we don't handle as pets, right? We want them to be as natural as possible. And so we're not going to do a lot of physical handling. Certain animals, you have to get your hands on for a vet procedure or something. A lot of times, I don't know exactly how they handle the black-footed ferrets. I haven't worked with them in that way. But something comparable in size, like a meerkat, if you had to get your hands on them, you wear like a welding glove, because if it could bite, you want to protect that hand. So that's an example of how you handle it to keep yourself safe.
We have folks from all over Kansas today here with us, which is great. We have Miss Hartwick's class from Junction City, Kansas, and they're wondering if you could have a black-footed ferret as a pet.
So you cannot. You have to have special permits to have a black-footed ferret. There's only like 3 species of ferrets, and all of your domesticated ferrets that you can have as pets are derived from a species of, they're called polecats, which is a type of ferret that's not the same as a black-footed ferret. So that is why that is different. So, and the domesticated ferrets have now been so overbred that they wouldn't be reintroduced anyway. So any wild ferret would not make a good pet.
Gotcha.
But great question. Similar with like chinchillas. Chinchillas are another animal, also a safe species that you wouldn't want to. They're extremely endangered out in the wild, anyways. You wouldn't be able to get your hands on one. But any time that you have a pet chinchilla, that's at this point not going to be reintroduced back to the wild, because it's just so different. It's been bred in captivity way too long. So.
And then some friends in Lyons, Kansas, are curious how long these live.
Ferrets, they don't live too long. If I remember correctly, it's kind of that 5 to 10 year range. They don't live extremely long. So a lot of those small like rodents and stuff don't live years. So as far as any other questions on these guys before we keep moving around, I might sure I get to talk about ways that you can help.
The last one is from our good friends at Sunset Hill in Lawrence, Kansas. Hi there in Lawrence. How did they help the ferrets repopulate?
So they do. They had collection of them and the species that were brought into breeding captivity, they would do breeding in that setting and make it as realistic as they could to survive. And so one of the biggest keys to let black-footed ferrets back out into the wild is making sure they're able to hunt and provide for themselves, which is extremely difficult. You can't, like I said, the reason why a lot of those domesticated animals you can't just reintroduce into the wild is because they don't know how to hunt. They don't know how to collect their own food. They're not conditioned to do that. So any of the animals that are bred in captivity, they have to practice with them. They have to put them in scenarios with a prairie dog or something they would hunt in the wild and make sure they can do it and then work towards that reintroduction. And it's also putting them in protected lands that they can't be hunted, or at least they can't be hunted legally to ruin those populations. So it's a long process. You have to be patient. You have to do your part to do that. So
Awesome.
all right, so we can keep on moving to the next couple things. So when it comes to safe species, and any species for that matter, I'll try to stick to Kansas species. There's a lot of ways that you can help, and a lot of ways that would one be planting gardens in your yard, and that doesn't just help. It primarily helps pollinators. So when it comes to keeping that ecosystem healthy, your prairie species, that includes your pollinators, so keeping your plants, your flowers as healthy as possible, and making sure that native species stay here in Kansas and keeping those ecosystems healthy. So we have bees behind us. There's an active hive behind us. You may have seen this if you were on the tour through Prairie or North America earlier. So you can plant those native species, have a pollinator garden in your home. That's one way. And if you keep coming with me, I'm going to show you a couple other ways that you can help out. A couple more examples of ways that we can help here in Kansas to keep native species, native prairie species, native Kansas species healthy and cared for. One of those ways, like I said, pollinators, are pollinating plants is really helpful, not just for bees, for butterflies, for hummingbirds, and other pollinating animals. But to also keep birds safe, you can use things as far as like, hello, bird safe glass. And bird safe glass itself, you may not be able to get a hold of. We're going to keep walking towards elk here. But you can put little stickers or bird safe decals on windows so that you get less bird strikes. Here's one of our bald eagle right there, one of the two. And so over at Elk, we have what are called bird safe stickers on our glass. And you can walk right up to the front of Elk there, and you can see the little dots in the glass. And this is really, really important. We do this a lot of the glass around Sedgwick County Zoo to keep as many bird strikes down as possible, because migrating birds are more likely to hit glass like this. There's certain glass you can get that has a certain tint or reflection to it so that they can see it. You even have a little note on here that says these dots help birds see the glass. So that's really, really beneficial for them. Like I said, any of these big glass displays that we have, we try to keep as safe as we can. So we found the areas that we get the most bird strikes and set it up so that they have the most success there. And then one of the other things you can do at your own home or anything like that is build what's called a bat box or a bat house. So right here, this is, I mean, obviously you've heard of bird houses, and you can do that as well. That would also help birds be safe. But you can build one of these on your own, or you can buy kits and you can actually house native bats. Yes, we have bats in Kansas. Most of the bats here in Kansas are insectivores, so they're going to eat your insects. So one of the benefits of having this isn't just keeping bats having a safe place to live, but they keep insect populations down. You don't like your campfires or the backyard with a bunch of bugs, they could help keep those down as well. So really cool, really kind of fun way to talk about it with people that visit your home and those types of things, and pretty easy to get a hold of or to build really easily. So cool. So there's a few different things you can do to help some of our native species here in Kansas. Maybe not always the big, beautiful ones, but some of the smaller ones we don't really think about as much. So
it's awesome. Well, let's get a close up.
And they can, that holds more than one bat. There are a bunch of them can fit up in there. They're not as big as you'd think. Even the big brown bats are pretty small. So, thanks.
Oh, here's a shot.
Oh yeah,
That's
Lincoln. He's our bull elk. You can get a good view of him back there.
Well, we want to thank you all so much for joining us from all around the state today. It's been an awesome day here, and huge shout out, of course, to Sedgwick County Zoo for all the conservation efforts, but also just for all the education and for being willing to do this. And we're very thankful to them, and we're thankful for all of you for being here. So
thanks for coming.
Y'all have a wonderful day, and happy Kansas Day. Bye, everyone.